Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint's Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. You've heard their point, now listen to the counterpoint.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. We're coming at you on May 12th, 2021. As usual, things are pretty interesting times, so we got a lot to talk about. But before we can get to any of that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. And in our upper right-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So let's jump into it. Vaccines and masks and COVID, we sort of can't get away from that in the news. Recently, Joe Rogan kind of got himself in a little bit of hot water. And I think it's certainly worth talking about just because of the religiosity around all this stuff. Joe Rogan obviously has one of the biggest podcasts in the country. He certainly has one of the largest podcast audiences. And he recently was on a podcast where he said that he wouldn't really recommend for young people to go get the vaccine. He thought, well, if you're healthy and maybe there's some risks involved. I can't remember quite what the quote was, but essentially he had sort of said, hey, look, there's some uncertainty and all that, and you're not in much risk from the, COVID yourself if you're young. And he meant talking about 21-year-old or something like that. Then, he said, no, why bother to get it? And so he sort of backtracked a little since he's gotten a lot of pressure on that from a lot of places. But it is kind of interesting. I mean, here it's just somebody giving sort of their, rough opinion. They're not a doctor, but it's just somebody who kind of can see what's happening out there in the world. And you got all these young people whose lives are kind of upended. And they're talking about forcing these vaccines on people, and he's saying, "Well, if I were young, I weigh the risks, and I probably wouldn't get it." And so the world comes down on him because he has spoken. He is heresy. I guess is the correct word. Yes. So So you guys have any thoughts on this?
There's something wrong going on, very wrong in our society. We have some people out there who have ordained themselves as priests and priestess, I guess, of information and disinformation. They get to decide who is speaking this misinformation or disinformation. If you look at CDC data, okay, it tells you I believe in the United States is somewhere 120, 130 people under the age of 21 who have died from this COVID. Okay, it's tragic, each one of them, because they have a brother or sister, a mother or father and all that. It is tragic. But when you look in the grand scheme of things, that is just a fraction of 1% of the amount of people who would have gotten infected, or even where all the affections occurred. Okay, so young people who are healthy, and this is what Joe Rogan made the point: young people who are healthy, well, they are not immune from the disease, but they have shown resistance to the disease. Worse yet, young people die at higher rates from other things, car accidents for that matter. Why are we so upset when someone, a podcaster in this case, he's not a doctor, he made that clear, says this is something we should think about? Do we really need to be vaccinating people under 21 who are healthy? I mean, if there's somebody maybe they have childhood diabetes or they have some other underlying disease or that kind of stuff, I can see the point with no problem. But I don't think you should call someone anti-vax. I don't know if they call them that, but they certainly implied it. And call them some anti-vax just because they suggest that maybe we should reconsider this policy involving young people when there are other things that kill them at higher rates. It's just this woke nonsense, this woke religion that is tearing our country apart.
Yeah. Well, I think, of course, and I'm sure Leon would agree that they have a right to voice their opinion in disagreement with what Joe Rogan said.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the one guy that wrote an article, and he did have some background in the medical field. Yeah, he made a good argument, I thought. It was a little, maybe a little over the top, but he was saying, okay, they're not, it's the old mask thing. They're not getting the vaccine for them. They're getting it for other people, the young people. So the young people that are, they're recommended to get the vaccine so that they will not transmit it to somebody else. When the transmission rates between young people that have an immune system that suppresses that virus right away is pretty low. And I can see what they're saying. Sure. They make a good point. Okay, so if somebody wants to do it, and they're worried that they're going out to clubs. So his example was they're going out to clubs shouting YOLO. What does YOLO mean? YOLO? Anyway, I have no idea. It means something. So apparently, all these young people in these clubs yelling YOLO and spreading this virus to other young people who have a very, very low incidence. I assume if they were to protect someone else, it would be as if the old people like myself would be in there, with the young kids. Like we go partying in the clubs with the young kids, right? And so us old folks might get it from the young kids yelling YOLO, and we don't even know what that means.
You only live once. You only live once.
You only live once. Oh, that's right. There you go. You only live once. You only live once. Yeah. And so, so I'm in there. I don't even, and now I know what it means. And I'm supposed to get it from them, I guess. But anyway, it was still a good argument. But Joe has
a good argument for taking the vaccine. Is that
for
what you're
taking
saying?
the vaccine as a young person, because, you're trying to, to do whatever you can to stop it. And you don't want to, as a young person who's not going to probably be infected, if you have some time during the disease phase where you can give it to someone else, you want to reduce that. So that's their reasoning behind it. And I thought that was, whether I or not I agree with it 100% or 50% or whatever, it's a good argument, and they have a right to argue against what Joe is saying. And anyway, that's all I'm saying. It's something that, I'm glad, I hope that unlike us who have had 2 shows removed, apparently Joe Rogan makes enough money for Google that his videos are left up there, while apparently us mere
minions
YouTube minions don't count enough that they got to nitpick our little itty bitty audience, to our audience reach, and cancel us. But at least they didn't cancel Joe, so I'm happy for that. And again, it's good to debate this kind of stuff. That's what
I agree. Yes.
That's what we need to do. It's good to have Joe say what he wants to say, and it doesn't matter if he's not an epidemiologist, because the people making the decisions about getting the vaccine are not either. Do we have to be an epidemiologist to decide whether or not what goes into our body and what doesn't, what stays out? No, it's up to us. So, he's just voicing an opinion. So, it's better that you have this back and forth instead of this other nonsense, this canceling and all that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lance.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jason. It's okay. Fine. Go ahead.
Well, this is the crazy thing, is because ultimately, what science is supposed to be there for? It's supposed to be there for giving us, I guess, knowledge about the risks of what we're doing, but not to make the decision about whether those risks are worth taking. That's not the decision of science. The decision of science is not to tell you how you should live your life. It's simply to give you advice about how the real world works. And then it's up to you to decide what risks you're willing to take. And that's what a democracy is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about where we all bow down to a bunch of guys in white coats and they just simply tell us how to live. We're literally supposed to. And that's part of a democracy, is that we have conversations amongst ourselves and decide how we want to vote. And the idea that people want to shut somebody down, it just, and say that, well, you're not a scientist. Well, yeah, that's not the point, So we don't get to talk now. We're not a democracy anymore. Is that kind of where we're going? We're just supposed to listen to a guy in a white coat and do everything he says. Yeah, that's a kind of a scary place that the left is sort of pushing us towards.
And even when Joe Rogan, who we all know is not a doctor, even when he made his statement, he did point a little bit to some science, which is young, healthy people tend not to get the virus, tend not to transmit it. Okay, I mean, he didn't say all that, but that was the implication of his statement. And if those things are true, and the science seems to back that, then why you have to be upset about his statement to start with? Even though I will concede to Tim, what Tim just said was that everybody should be given equal opportunity to make their case for or against Rogan's statement. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But most of the statements that are being made is based on nothing but pure emotion. Absolutely nothing but pure emotion. They're not pointing to any sort of science about. Well, Tim raised that article that said about people congregating in clubs and shouting YOLO, which we now know is you only live once. Sure, things like that happen. But even with those things, how many people die, young people die from the COVID? It's a very, 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 very small percentage. Not to say each one is not tragic. It is. But the percentage is very, 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 very small.
Well, I mean, it's probably about as tragic and as common as young people dying of the flu, I imagine. And yet we don't stop the world every flu season because we're afraid that just a handful of people are going to succumb to it. So it's just this world we're entering is a very scary world right now of what people are willing to. The liberties people are willing to toss aside in the name of following the leader on safety. It's just, I don't know, it's pretty scary.
It's like we have to get to this utopia where there's no risk, none. That's the only time we'll feel safe again. We have to get to this point where, oh my God, everything is risk free. We don't have to worry about anything. Like if we could ever get there, we can't.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your surgeon graduated from a high school that didn't teach calculus.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine that. And we should be worried. But Tim, you just raised a very good point. Maybe you didn't realize how important that point is. We should be worried about the surgeon who graduated from high school and never did calculus, rather than Joe Rogan, who is not even a doctor, making a statement about COVID. Come on. Talk about setting our priorities straight here.
Well, speaking of, kind of this crazy world we're living in of kind of no risk mentality, I've got a graphic I want to show up here, and it's related to the CDC's website on what they advise for wearing masks. And so here they show, that if you are fully vaccinated, here are the activities you can engage in and can't engage in. Now, I thought the point of a vaccine was that it made you immune to the virus. And yet they're kind of showing you that there's a lot more things they think you shouldn't be doing without a mask than with a mask, which is kind of odd. And, and there's, I guess maybe it's even odder that they think there's a couple of things in their hyper safety mind that people who, let's say they say you can walk and run in a wheelchair roll or a bike outside with members of your household. So they'll let you do that if you're unvaccinated, apparently, without a mask. But I mean, some of these things are just kind of like, dine at an outdoor restaurant, or here, attend a crowded outdoor event like a live performance parade or sports event. Now, here they have a mask on, and if you're vaccinated, you probably are okay. I'm not quite sure why they think you need that if you're vaccinated, but more to the point, these are the same guys who were kind of saying that if you wanted to go protest and burn down a business, You didn't
That was
need
okay.
to worry about a mask.
That was okay. That was okay. Social justice cures the disease. We know that, right? We know that.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember the mayor of Chicago standing out there, Lori Lightfoot, in a huge crowd of people, and she actually addressed the fact, well, I don't have a mask, but this is really important.
Of course. Social justice cures the disease. Don't you know that, Jason? You got to get that straight.
Yeah. So, anyways, I thought this was interesting. I mean, it kind of shows the religiosity of where we're at with a lot of stuff. And, go to an uncrowded indoor shopping museum. You're vaccinated, you better wear a mask. I don't know.
when they put out, I mean, they're sending out all kind of messages, all kind of mixed messages here. So we are vaccinated. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought when you are vaccinated, you cannot transmit, nor can you get the disease. I thought that is what being vaccinated meant. I see Joe Biden is walking around. He's fully vaccinated. He was vaccinated before he took office. He's fully vaccinated, but he walks around with a mask. Now, what does that tell people? You don't believe in the vaccine? What exactly are you saying by wearing this mask after you've been fully vaccinated? I don't understand this.
Well, and here's a really fun one. It says, attend a small indoor gathering of fully vaccinated and unvaccinated people from multiple households. That was kind of like when Joe Biden recently visited Jimmy Carter and his wife, and they stood there for a very strange image. Unfortunately, I didn't get that image for the show here, but it was a very strange image of where they look like giants and Jimmy Carter and his wife looked like midgets or I guess hobbits or something. I don't know. It's really bizarre. But the main thing was none of them were wearing masks, and according to the CDC, they're supposed to be wearing masks. So I mean, this is just, I don't know. And then the funny thing was he put on a mask when he left, which was really funny. I guess maybe he thought there'd be more cameras outside than inside. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is so bizarre. Joe Biden was at some event, I believe it's some campaign rally. Well, it wasn't a campaign rally, but some kind of rally in Georgia, I believe it was. After he was finished, he apparently has put his mask somewhere and he couldn't remember where he put it. He lost it. He's in a panic at the podium trying to find this mask. Oh, I lost my mask. I'm going to be in trouble. The man is fully vaccinated and he's worried about this. This is so bizarre.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, somebody like Trump having been panicked for, losing his mask. I think that's a huge juxtaposition there between the two.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but it's funny. You look at the kind of religiosity going on here around some of this stuff with the CDC, and I mean, it makes you wonder, how much science is going on with a lot of this stuff. And recently, with the schools, they had an issue where it turned out that they had a policy. In fact, I think the director of CDC came out fairly early and said that she thought that schools should be going. And then suddenly the White House came out and said, oh, that was just her personal opinion. And then they came out after they got some guidance from the schools and the teachers union. And after the teachers union told them about the science, then then the CDC told the rest of us about the science and how we just couldn't start the schools back up, right now. So I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on this whole scandal with the teachers union sort of running the science at the CDC?
Well, the pilots that are out of work aren't calling up the CDC saying, we don't want to be, we don't think it's safe to go fly airplanes and be in the same aluminum tube with a bunch of other people that really may be contagious as opposed to little kids. So there must be something different a bit between a pilot who wants to go back to work and is not influencing the CDC with emails and so on, and or a pilots union and the teachers union that is influencing the CDC when they're saying things that are completely unscientific to try to prove to or try to influence the the direction of opening schools in America. So yeah, it's really telling, apparently, about teachers in particular.
It's quite bizarre, but if you take a step back, the CDC have become nothing but a political tool. Seriously. If you remember, very early in the pandemic, they were talking about using hydroxychloroquine with zinc to be a therapeutic for the COVID virus. And oh boy, it looked like they were going to do it. But then suddenly Donald Trump came out and said, this is a game changer. And then everybody, including the CDC, started to talk, hydroxychloroquine is a dangerous drug. We've been using this thing for like 55 years in this country. I think over 1 billion doses or some extraordinary number like that have been used. But suddenly it became dangerous because Donald Trump said it may be a game changer.
Yeah, that red-haired non-scientist Donald Trump.
Exactly. Yes, how dare he say a thing like that? But the CDC first gave authorization for its use, but then they revoked it. Then we have this woman here, I forgot her name, Walensky or whatever her name is. She comes out and say, we could open back the schools. The teachers don't have to be vaccinated. It's not a problem. And all of a sudden, the White House said, oh, no. She was speaking in a personal capacity. Now, what kind of crap is that? Yeah. Isn't she not the CDC when she's speaking at all times?
Well, ahead of the CDC? Isn't the White House supposed to get their science from the CDC and not the other way around?
Exactly. Exactly. But then
I didn't know Joe Biden had a chemistry set going on.
I didn't know that either. Maybe he has one. Maybe he has one in the basement, and he forgot to tell us about it. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they always put that out there that you can't have an opinion about anything unless you're in the Wikipedia or in whatever they are. Disease. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just going to say, I wasn't sure if you were about to stop, but I was going to say, remember, he's busy at work there in the Oval Office trying to cure cancer as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he's got all the beakers and the Bunsen burners.
So if somebody does, like a Joe Rogan, or somebody doesn't have a good opinion, why all of a sudden do the teachers unions have such an important voice when they don't have that training?
Exactly.
So why don't they turn around and use it on them? Oh, could it be that they contribute so much money to Democratic political campaigns?
Just the point.
Could that be
Just
it?
the point, right? Joe Rogan says it, and we have a meltdown. The left media have a meltdown. Okay, the CDC now say, well, we don't have to reopen schools, and all of a sudden everybody's fine with that, including the White House. Everybody's fine with it. It's cool.
The CDC, of course, yeah. We know that you mean after being affected by the teachers union.
Yes, the emails of the teachers union. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. No, I'm sorry. I cut myself short because of Knucklehead Noise Patrol. But you're right, Tim. Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's about time for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And so, there goes the sound. Having lots of trouble with that Knucklehead sound. But speaking of other knuckleheads we're having trouble with the sound from, and that's Fauci. And Fauci is just kind of he doesn't want to go away. He's been around for a year. He's getting pretty comfortable, and so this Mother's Day, he was interviewed on a few different channels, and when asked about Mother's Day and masks, he seems to be indicating that we're in for masks potentially for a lot longer, or at least he would like to see us in masks for a lot longer. So here's on Meet the Press. He said, I think people have gotten used to the fact that mask wearing, clearly, if you look at the data, diminishes respiratory diseases. We've had practically non-existent flu season this year, merely because people were doing the kinds of public health things that we directed predominantly against COVID-19. So it's conceivable that as we go on a year or two more from now, that during certain seasonal periods when you have respiratory borne viruses like the flu, people might actually elect to wear masks. And then he said on this week, he says, I hope that next Mother's Day, we're going to see a dramatic difference than what we're seeing right now. I believe that we will be about as close to back to normal as we can. But there's conditions to that. But we've got to make sure that we get the overwhelming proportion of the population vaccinated. But bottom line is he's kind of thinking like next year, and he's thinking years ahead.
Years ahead, yes.
He's not just thinking, like, hey, remember this was a 2-week process when we started this whole thing. This was a 2-week proposal, and he's got his vision is long term. So I don't know. You guys have any thoughts about Fauci, forever Fauci?
Forever Fauci. Well, he probably has a point. I've had a pretty healthy year myself when I normally get some kind of flu virus, during the year, but this year I haven't. And maybe it's because of the masks and so on and so forth. But, if we're going to use the same logic, let's bring the speed limit in the country down to 45 miles an hour tops on the freeways. That'll save a lot of lives.
And why not 15?
Why not 15? True. Why not 15?
So, yeah. Well, of course, it's just, but you also have to look at the other downsides. Besides a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, especially 15, but a 45 not being conducive to people getting where they need to go and to get the economy humming along at its normal pace, because we're moving around quick and it's good. I get to work. I spend less time in the car, and that's unproductive time. And so I'm able to do productive activities and get going with higher speed limits. And the same thing with masks. We don't get the human interaction of looking at a full face instead of this face with a covering on it. And so we don't get all those little perks that are unknown, half of them probably still. We're finding out more and more about the depression levels and suicide frequencies changing because of all this, and
a mask hides a frown too. So.
Yeah, that's true. So you say you don't know. Is that guy smiling at me?
Yeah. Or is he cursing at you? Is he cursing at you? Yes.
Exactly. So all these little cues of communication that we have are gone with these masks. So, okay, there's a downside that way. Probably other downsides related to wearing masks that, let's face it, people aren't changing them like the CDC recommends, washing them every day and changing them every day, at least. Sometimes even more often. And not touching it and this, that, and the other thing. So we're all violating every rule they have on there. And here we are.
Speaking of violating rules, we are about out of time here. We've about violated our time limit. But thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us for the next one. Until then, stay free.